Okay, so at this point we're going directly into full book spoiler territory. So if you are reading the book series or you think you want to read the book series at some point, then you should probably stop the video now, and I will see you next time, and I appreciate you joining me. And if you are not a fantasy reader, you don't like reading, or you just really like spoilers, then okay, let's get started. So I spent more than 20 years writing this series, and I honestly don't know at this point how to break it down because everything is like so intermingled in my head. And because I split up the books after they were already written, I am not real solid on where things happen in the story anymore, because rearranging things so that it could be split up into separate books kind of muddied things a little bit for me, but I'm gonna do my best. Okay, who do we start with? What in the world is my book about? It's like I decided I was going to talk about it and just everything just left my head. Okay, so we will start with I will read you the description on the back of the book to get started, because I feel like that's the best starting point for all of the character spoilers. So, the fate of Faral's missing parents has always been a mystery, but her mother's necklace, the royal crest given to all court mages, could provide the answer. After a lifetime of training, a single trip to the capital could give Faral everything she ever wanted. All she has to do is cross the treacherous ruins of an ancient maze to get there. But the ruins are forbidden for a reason. Exiled to the labyrinth for the scales and claws his wild magic gave him, Damon could find freedom if he could only gain control of his power. I'll pause there to say that that is the name that Lumia gave Rune, and he doesn't actually get the name Rune until the end of the second book, even though he gets the scar in his hand that gives him the name in the first chapter of this, where she stabs him in the hand a couple of times. I hope you guys like violence. His chance encounter with Faral changes everything. In exchange for safe passage, she can teach the control he so desperately needs. Sharing temple secrets could get her expelled. His reckless nature could get her killed. With her window of opportunity to meet with the court mages drawing closed, Faral is forced to make a choice. But with secrets lurking behind Damon's exile and hatred fueling his motives, their alliance could cost her more than she ever believed possible. Okay, so I did not bring enough water for this explanation. So we've already covered that Faral has spent her entire life in the temple, and she knows that her mother was most likely a court mage because she has a necklace that is the court mage's crest. Faral has spent her entire life in the temple, which borders on these ruins, which it's a maze of concentric circles that spreads like miles and miles and takes up like a quarter of the island that she lives on. Why am I still holding you for this? Nobody even likes you. Let's hold you. You're cute. And one of the important characters. So as I'm sitting here thinking about this, there's like a million different things that I could say about the story chronologically, so I think I'm just going to try to hit high notes character by character. So Lumia over here, and Invesi, my soul doll Paratisi head that is currently put away until her new body arrives. They are mortal enemies. They are antagonists of each other because they were originally both parts of the temple leadership, like the temple where Faral, Kit, and Rika all train. The reason they are on different sides is because the temple split into two factions as a result of Rune becoming contaminated by tainted magic. Lumia's side thinks that tampering with magic is a horrible idea, and she's probably right, and she wants people to just let magic gradually die out. Invesia's side thinks that the experiments are worth the risk, and it doesn't really matter how many people are harmed or destroyed as long as they find a way to keep magic from slowly dying out as the bloodlines become more diluted. Because although the temple has gone to great lengths to hide it, the truth of the matter is the Eldani are not the original mages. The original mages were a completely different race, and the Eldani are a result of their bloodline mixing with that of humans. Humans did not naturally have any magic, and it's only the crossbreed between the two races that allows magic into a population. The original mages all had free magic. They were unbound like Rune, but not tainted. So that puts Invesi and Lumia at odds. In the wake of what happened with Rune, they both petitioned the crown for support for their faction. Originally, it looked like the crown was going to side with Lumia's faction, but because Invesi's faction promised that they would eventually be able to undo what happened to Rune, ultimately the king sided with Invesi because he kind of wants his son to not be tormented with wild magic. So after spending an entire lifetime having mages poke and prod at him and never making progress, Rune is extremely fed up with the mages. And at that point he decides that the best thing that he can do is join Lumia's faction. And he could just settle down and let nature take its course and let magic slowly die out. Or he could lure some temple mages into teaching him how to control his magic so that he can go obliterate everybody. Unsurprisingly, he goes with the revenge thing. So where that starts becoming extremely tangled up is along the way as he is training with Pheral. It comes to light that he has feelings for her and has for a very long time because he has been incognito in the temple in disguise for many years. He has tried very hard to make her hate the version of him that she knows in the temple. But after they start spending time together with him being his real self, and she's not scared of him, and she is still willing to associate with him, then all of a sudden he can't really help but kind of fall in love with her. So as their relationship progresses, Pheral eventually gets herself expelled from the temple because she is caught helping teach him magic that he is not supposed to know. She goes on to join the underlings, and the two of them get married, and then everything kind of goes downhill. So Pheral spends all this time knowing that Rune was raised in the palace but hidden away and never crowned as heir to the kingdom because he is kind of a disappointment to his dad. What they don't know at that point is that Rune is not the king's son. He was just given to the king as a way to convince him that the temple needed his support. The Archmage, Invesi, is the king's wife, and when she departed to begin her experiments in the temple, she was expecting their first child. The child that she gave him was Rune, because she knew that having the corruption of his magic would give her easy control of Kefel's resources, because Kefel was not going to refuse anything that she might need to help make his child whole again. In reality, her child was Pheral, who was in fact not abandoned at the temple by parents who were killed in action or otherwise disappeared, but she was being held in reserve as a bargaining chip in case Kefel ever figured out the truth behind Rune not being his son, and that Invesi had basically been playing him the entire time. So while they are together with the rest of the underlings, Rune and Pheral have a pretty happy life, and they make all these plans of that, she's going to be a healer for his people because they really would benefit from that. It really helps her self-confidence and her abilities to be able to make a difference in society, and it also gives her an opportunity to help Rune really hone his abilities as a mage. And then things kind of fall apart toward the end of the second book when there is a confrontation between Kefel, the king, and Lumia. And that is when he learns that Lumia was partially responsible for what happened to Rune. So, still not knowing that his actual child has been hidden away from him and that he's been given a decoy, Kefel ends up killing Lumia in a fit of rage. So, that doll, she's dead by the end of the second book. But I needed some villains, so I needed some villains in my photo stories. By killing Lumia, who had become queen of her faction, Kefel ends up setting off a war between the underling faction, the human faction, and his own faction. So as this war is erupting, Rune ends up going to the front lines because Feral has vanished from their village where they were beginning to build a settlement, and the village has been burned. So he knows that Feral has either been captured or she has been killed. And this leads to a confrontation between him and the king, where he kills the king and is then captured. And unfortunately for him, during the course of this, Kefel learned that Feral was his child. And while she agreed to go to the capital with Kefel to try to quell whatever was happening, during this time she finds out about Lumia being killed and Rune going to the front lines. And the impression given to her, quite deliberately from the mages because they are trying to control her, is that he has gone to war and started this war as a result of Lumia being killed because he and Lumia were previously lovers. Feral knew that, so it seemed plausible, and she was just a little bit mad at him. And I promise all of this is important for how the different characters are connected. Because while Rune ends up escaping into exile instead of being executed, and Feral takes the crown, as soon as she is made queen, she realizes that their intention to start a family was effective. And now she needs a husband right away because it would be incredibly inappropriate for anybody in the kingdom to know that the man who killed their king was the father of her child. And so yeah, that's Lulu is that child, and some people have guessed because of her purple eyes, which don't really show very well in this video here, but they've guessed because of her purple eyes that she is Rune and Feral's daughter, and that is correct. So congratulations to those of you who figured it out. Ouch, my hair. So at that point in time, Vaughn, who was Rune's best friend, had promised that he would look out for Feral after Rune fled. And Kit, who is Feral's best friend, was engaged to Vaughn. So Kit decided that the best course of action to keep Feral safe and keep peace in the kingdom would be for Vaughn and Feral to get married. So they get married while Rune flees to the north, and at that point is when Rune meets Garam, who is the captain of the guard, and Rune, of course, manages to get himself arrested as soon as he lands there, and Garam is put in charge of his training to make him a part of the Triad's army as a punishment. And it's during one of those military campaigns that happens across the 3rd and 4th books where Rune meets Rillen, who has also been corrupted by Feral's mom, the evil archmage. And that is kind of to the point in the story where all of the doll characters are shelled, with the exception of Lumia, who is just here because I really wanted to have the early series villain character in doll format. Everybody is pretty much set in a timeline around the 4th book, and kind of in that gap between the 4th book and 5th book, because there's a space of time in there where I may eventually set more stories, because there's some more important stuff that happens in the middle there, but it wasn't necessary to the core story that I was trying to tell, so I ended up kind of skipping that stuff, because the Snake's Blood Saga is really a story about, you know, the connections between Rune and Feral and their factions. And even though there's stuff that happens in that gap, Feral wouldn't be a part of those stories, because her arc at that point, the bridge between books 4 and books 5, between book 4 and book 5, her arc is just coming into her power as queen, while Rune is off trying to search for the original mages who may have the ability to help him cleanse his power. And if he can cleanse his power, then he might have a chance to be able to go back under a new identity and start a new life over again in his homeland, and hopefully be with Feral. But I guess that's the general story of all of the doll characters, and I think that Rika probably has the least story of all, and I realize now that I forgot to say anything about Cornelius, but he's a little fish doll there in the fishbowl, and he doesn't have a story. He's just a fish. But that is the gist of the story for all of the other dolls, and that was a lot, and I need a drink now, so I'm going to stop and I'm going to go get some water. But I hope you enjoyed hearing that, and hopefully for those of you who are not readers, you're, you know, a little more versed in the character backgrounds that are established between all of these dolls. And in the past, I did do a video about the dolls that I chose and why, so I'm going to link to that in the video description, I guess, so you can check that out whenever you have time if that's more along the lines of what you're interested in. But if you have done this prompt, or if you end up doing this prompt, I would like to know more about your backgrounds that you've established too. So feel free to post a link to the videos that you have made using this prompt in the comments, and we'll check them out. But thanks for joining me, and I'll see you next time.